Hello, welcome to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. Today we have with us Laurie Guest, who is a certified speaker, keynote speaker, and an author. She teaches business leaders and teams how to attract and keep new customers, which if you are a business owner, this will be valuable for you because all of us need to attract and keep new customers. So Laurie, welcome to Speak Your Way to Cash.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us how you decided to make speaking your profession, speaking and helping businesses your profession.
I didn't even know speaking was a profession. That was what was so amazing. I think a lot of us fall into this. My original background was in healthcare, and I was employed at one of the biggest ophthalmology practices in the Midwest, and we were known for our customer service. And industries from all around were coming and asking, what are our secrets to attracting and keeping great staff and to have such happy patients? So my doctor kind of looked around the office and said, Laurie, you like to talk. Why don't you put a program together and start telling people our secrets, how we do what we do? And so I started doing that. So it was part of my paid job to really provide educational programs, not only for the public on eye disease and treatment, which was my niche background, but also the development of the teams of our referral sources. And so that's how I first started doing it. And then one day, about 3 or 4 years into this, I was speaking in a large eye conference. And I thought I was going to kind of be the belle of the ball. I was the keynote speaker, and I was used to that role. Well, when I got there, there was a lady speaking in front of me, and she had nothing to do with the eye industry. And she had people on the edge of their seats, Ashley. They were laughing, they were crying, they were lining up to buy her books. And I'm like, who is this lady? So afterwards, I walked up to her, I said, you're not even in this field, right? And she said, no, I'm not. I said, what, kind of like, whoa. And she said, I'm a professional speaker. And I said, you get paid to go around and speak? This is like 30 years ago. And she goes, I do. And I said, I think I want to do what you do. And she said, well, I'm the incoming president of the National Speakers Association. Let me show you the way. And that's how I was introduced to the world of professional speaking. And within 2 years, I had left my well-paying full-time job and hung my shingle and started my own speaking and training company. And I never looked back. And I love this field and I love talking about it. So I'm glad you invited me here. I could talk all day about this topic.
Oh, good. Okay, this is awesome. So I'm sure we're going to get some amazing gems then because you have decades of experience in the industry. And you mentioned something, your speaking and training business. So one of the questions that I love to ask that gives so much insight to people listening who want to do it full time is what are the streams of revenue in your speaking business? Do you license courses? Do you do keynotes as well as training? And then if you could tell us the streams and then the which is the top performer in your business in terms of revenue?
What a great question. So the answer is I have tried multiple streams and there's some that I didn't care for and I let those out of my practice. So the ones that I let go quickly, let's start there.
Okay.
I thought I would love coaching and I thought I would love consulting. And I actually did not love either one of those. And so I released those, but they are great options for the people who are listening to this and they're looking for what could their portfolio look like. Certainly there's great money and great practice building techniques you can use through coaching and consulting. For my practice today, what I focus on is predominantly keynote speaking. And then I had lots of virtual options that were available even before we hit the at-home virtual world that we live in right now. I had some of those pieces already in place, like self-directed learning platforms, specifically focused on customer service. And so I got lucky there because I already had that in place. And I'm also an author, although that isn't really about making money for me. That is much more about the credibility and the back of room sales that can go with it. But I never had the dream of being like a, New York Times best-selling author. That is something you can pursue. But for me, that was not where my superpower lie. So the short answer is keynote speaking, workshops, and online or virtual training.
Okay, perfect. And for your self-directed training platforms, do you license those out?
I have. I don't do that as often anymore. Quite frankly, it gets very confusing. And to be able to control how it's being used became a very complicated thing. So many of my colleagues do a beautiful job of navigating that. For me, I use it much more as a way to upgrade my package offers. And so I hold on to that pretty tight. So when I give a license or sell a license, it's much more about to an individual client for the use, the time of use. use. So they
Yeah.
get a license for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. But what I don't do is license out my program. Let's say you wanted to buy my program and present it on my behalf, like an affiliate. I don't do any of that, but I could have. I just chose not to go down that path.
That makes sense because a lot of us, a lot of the people that I work with are thinking about that because eventually they're like, well, how does my sunset look as a speaker? Will my message live on in the same way that books live on? And the way to do that, some are thinking is like, okay, well, I could train other speakers and let them, utilize those programs. But for you, you said it got complicated. What were some of the issues you saw with that model?
Well, first of all, I chose early on to be a one-person show.
Oh, you don't have any employees?
I do not. So I do have
Ooh.
a social media director. I certainly have independent contractors that provide my graphic needs services. So I go out and hire individually the people who help me.
Yeah.
But backstory on this. When I first sat down with my husband and said, hey, I'm thinking I might want to leave my 6-figure job and be a professional speaker, he said, okay, let's talk about this. And so we talked about it. And at the end of the conversation, he had only 2 requirements and then he was on board 100%.
Okay.
You want to know what the 2 requirements are?
Yes, I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah. The first one is that I would not ever have a bricks and mortar location. He said, if you don't have a booking, we're still paying rent.
Right.
You have a house that can accommodate an in-home office. And because I'm not seeing people face to face, why can't I build it in my home? So number 1 was you got to have the office in the home. Yeah. And number 2, that we don't carry a staff. Because he felt that would give us the freedom to stop anytime we wanted to, and I wouldn't have somebody else's livelihood in my hands. And I got to tell you, I'm really glad now, and I think I've been doing this 26 years. 26 in, I have never had to hire or fire anybody. I go and get an independent contractor. They do what I need. Okay, so all of that said, those are 2 really great things. Now here's the downside. There's only so many hours in a day for me. So if I am the everything, find the material, write the material, present it, sell. I love to sell, by the way. Yeah. All of that I do myself. That means something has to give. So the things that give for me is anything that's super complicated to figure out. Unless I want to go hire somebody to figure it out, I just choose a different path. And with licensing, there just became a lot of hoops. I'll rattle off a few. You've got the legalities. How are you going to do this? What are the rules going to be? You've got the enforcement of it. Okay, now you're a trained leader of my material, but are you doing it the way you're supposed to? You now represent my brand. Is that what I really want, depending on what type of speaker you are? And then even and I think this is really important part of this, is your content conducive to a licensing situation? I specialize in customer service. And while I feel that my concepts are solid and I've got some super creative ideas, look, customer service is a noisy marketplace, right? Yeah. There are so many customer service speakers and customer service concepts. And maybe I'm selling myself short here, but what I believed is that my content was not something that was so unique, intellectual property only owned by me, that licensing it would even make sense. The only people I saw licensing it might be really good speakers who can't develop their own content. And that wasn't the business that I wanted to be in. Now, anybody listening who's saying, oh, but wait, Laurie, wait, Ashley, I've got content that nobody has ever thought of. It is so unique. I just need to get on a platform and I need to start teaching. If that's true of your story, first of all, make sure you're right about that. But second, if it truly is unique, then you absolutely should be a person that begins to seek out the experts in licensing and selling your content for others to present or use.
Yeah, those are so many great points. And we have to get to sales since you love sales, but you mentioned 3 points that I wanted to hone in on, the legalities of it. It's not, it is a contractual beast, really. And I'm an intellectual property lawyer. So I own a law firm aside from Speak Your Way to Cash. But when we're doing licensing agreements, the agreement part, you can hire a firm, we can put together the agreement, we can package it. But the second piece that you said that I think people really take for granted is the enforcement. So what are your procedures going to be if a client absolutely hates the presentation and they know your name, but they don't necessarily care about the individual trainer? Because a lot of speakers who do that, like if you think of John Maxwell, most people are buying the license to his programs to leverage his name in the marketplace. But what if that goes wrong. So they leverage the name, and his name is great and he has a great standard, but the individual person doesn't. What are you going to do? And this is something that we deal with a lot just in intellectual property in general. A lot of people are comfortable paying for the trademark, for the licensing agreement, but they are totally adverse to suing if things go bad.
Absolutely. And the other thing you're well aware of because of your role and your degree is, what about errors and omissions? Are you covering yourself legally for what happens when that company takes the advice of this intellectual property and then something goes horribly wrong?
Yeah.
Somebody could be held responsible for that. Is it going to be me? Is it going to be you who presented my material? That's where the layers started to come in. And I have some colleagues that kind of throw caution to the wind, and they really feel like it's a risk, that it's not that big a deal. And that's easy to say until you're the one who ends up in a court of law trying to figure out how to navigate this. It just wasn't my ball game.
And that's actually a great point, because what typically happens for speakers who are like, whoa, this just put so much on my mind. But these are great points that are very rarely talked about, because what happens when people sue, they don't necessarily sue the responsible party. They sue whomever they perceive to have deep pockets. And if someone's licensing your program, they're going to perceive that person to have deeper pockets than you, because you're paying them to get the product. So those are very, very, very good point. And then is it conducive to licensing? That's another great point, because you need to, if you don't have all of your materials copywritten and then you license it out and it turns out that your material is actually borrowed from other people's material, that could be a huge issue of liability as well. So I could see how it gets sticky. And as someone who has had employees and who run, because through our law firm, we have employees. Through Speak Your Way to Cash, we don't. We have contractors, so similar to you. And I have had just frankly moments where it's like, man, it was so much simpler when it was myself, my husband, who I've always considered to be like a consultant, and he's actually joining full time in the company. So I'm so excited about that. But like, that's different. A husband, like he's here, you know,
You're going to go through it together, right? It's a lot different.
But it is a lot less glamorous than I think people give it credit for. Having a team, having a staff, and being literally responsible for someone else's livelihood. And there's a paternal relationship between employer and employees that I did not totally understand until being an employer. Because if someone,
I think it's really important too that we decide where is your value at? For me, my value was, or my values, I should say, is I want to keep as many of the dollars that I earn as I possibly can. And it did not matter to me to be able to boast to the world that I've got a 7-person team and I've got a 4,000 square foot office and I'm on Main Street. And that was not where I wanted my bragging rights. I really wanted my bragging rights to be, I live a life of freedom. I get to decide when I want to work, and I can be off when I want to be off. And I generally, I'm talking now pre-pandemic, would work 10 months a year. I purposely would block 2 months off my calendar, usually July and December, and I would schedule the rest of the year around that, so that when I was off, it was truly off and not on the road and not doing all the things we have to do as speakers. That's a lifestyle choice I made, and that's what I like the bragging rights about, not about how many staff do I feed.
And that matters. I'm telling you, like, if you're anything like me, you're over here, if you have employees and a team and all this whole monstrosity, you're probably like, well, that sounds great. Like,
good for you.
Right? Like, how do I get that? Because I think for so many people, it feels like the only way to scale your speaking business is to hire more people to do the things that you do, to amplify it. But you've been extraordinarily successful without adding additional costs to the bottom line, which is essentially, that's smart, especially for the field that we're in. So when the pandemic hit, you didn't have to make calls about anything like, oh, are there going to be layoffs or not?
Right.
So how have you been able to grow your business while maintaining a model that employs contractors, but is small team?
The way that I grew my business was very strategic proposal writing. That was my secret sauce, in that most speakers, when they start, they pick a number. And when somebody asks, how much do you charge? They throw out a number. They throw out a flat number. And my belief is, if you do that, I don't even care what the number is, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. I don't care what the number is. When you are the first person to throw out the number, one of two things happens. Either you overprice yourself and lose the opportunity, or you possibly underprice yourself and leave money on the table. So
Right.
my theory has always been, we're going to give a 3-tiered option to every client that comes to us. Unless I know exactly how much money they want to spend and it's exactly how much I want to charge, then we can cut straight to the deal. It's X and I'll do that. I'll do this amount of work for that money. That's a simple sell. But most of the time, right, they're kicking the tires with us. They generally go out and look for a 3-pack. It's you, me, and Bob that are all in competition for this job. And they're going to decide which one of us, all things being equal, we all talk on the same thing. We all have the same general credentials. They're going to pick one over the other. Why do they pick me over you and Bob? And the answer is, for me, 3-tiered pricing.
Okay. And what does what does that look like?
Yeah, so I call it sweet spot pricing. And by the way, when we get to the end of the program, if you want me to give a free link to all of your listeners to go and download everything we're talking about, I'm happy to do that. I want to say I am not a coach or a consultant, which we covered already.
Yeah.
You cannot hire me to speak or coach you. So I am not seeking clients. In fact, I won't accept anybody as a client. So it's all just free goodies, but we're going to go through this in a hurry. So anybody who's listening and says, oh, wait, I wish I could see that in writing.
And I will link to that, guys. I'll even edit this and link to it in the video as well.
Perfect. So here we go. This is what I do is 3-tiered pricing, but internally I call it sweet spot. And here's why. Are you a football fan, Ashley, by any chance?
I'm not.
You're not. All right.
Cool,
But you get the game, right? At the end of the field is the uprights. And the goal of the kicker for a field goal is to kick it between the 2 uprights. That's the sweet spot. That's where we want to score, right? But the only way that you know where the target is, the middle package, is if we give you uprights, 1 on each end. So when I send a proposal, I call it a basic, a deluxe, and a premium. 3 prices with 3 different levels of service. And what my hope is if I've done a good job in the sales call, asking you the right questions, figuring out what your needs are, trying to figure out what your budget is, I will design the 3 packages so that the middle one is the one that you like. Think of it as a win-win. It's the amount of work you want from me for the amount of money I want to be paid. Good?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I write that out first, and it has about 5 features, 5 bullets, as I call it, inside the package. Then I designed the basic package. Think of this as the less than. This is less work than you want from me and less money than I want to be paid. But there are 2 important things in the basic. Number 1, the number I quote you cannot be one that makes me mad if you choose it. So if I price myself so low that you pick it, and now it's Tuesday night and I'm backing out of my driveway to deliver this keynote, and you paid me half what I feel my value is, then I'm agitated at you and me, then I didn't price it right. So it has to be a number that doesn't agitate me. And most important part, the basic package must include a deterrent, a reason you don't want it as my client, or you're going to pick it every day, all day long. So an example of a deterrent. This package available when I'm already in your area. This package is industry specific, but not customized. Maybe you wanted me for a half-day workshop, and I'm offering you a 1-hour virtual program. Okay, so that's a deterrent because it's not exactly what you wanted, but if you were dying to have me and couldn't afford my deluxe package, it is a way to get part of me. Okay, now we swing. Are we good there?
Yeah.
Am I talking too fast? Woody Woodpecker on
No,
crack?
that's perfect. This makes sense.
Okay, then we go to the other end and we do the premium package. Think of this as the more than. This is more work than you actually wanted from me, and way more money than I think you're willing to spend. I don't want you to buy the premium package. So the basic package has 3 bullets under it. The middle package has 5. And the premium package has 7 and above. It could have 10, 11 bullets if I want. And it's got all kinds of things packed in there. It might mean more of my time. It might mean a customized webinar 90 days after delivery. It might be that I bring a second speaker with me and we split the day. There's all kinds of things we can do in the premium package. Now, when I go to price it, the gap between basic and deluxe, the gap money needs to be narrower than the gap between deluxe and premium. So let's just talk easy numbers here. I don't want the packages to be $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 because that's equal gap on each side.
Right.
I would like it to be $2,000, $4,000, $8,000. I want to almost double the gap.
Okay.
Why? Why would I want to do it this way? Because when you open it up and look at it, here's what I want your reaction to be. Wow, that deluxe package is exactly what we're looking for, sold. Or you
Right.
look at it and you say, huh, we can't afford deluxe or premium, so I guess we'll have to make do with basic. Then I at least still get some income from you. And
Now, this makes I love the way you're explaining this, by the way. I just think it is so clear, so crisp,
good,
so clean.
good.
How would it work for a keynote then? Because, if they're looking for a keynote, what would be, or I guess you'd offer them more than what they want. So a keynote
More,
workshop, and then you do the
right.
keynote would be the deluxe, and basic will be just like a fireside chat then, or would it still be keynote?
The more creative we get, the better. And the
Okay.
good news is, isn't that downloadable that I'm telling you about? I've got what I call my 100 pick list, 100 different things that you can put into your packages. So all the listeners need to do is look at it and say, what am I capable of doing today in my business? I know some of your listeners are emerging speakers, and there
Yeah.
might be 75 things that they're not ready for yet, but there's 25 that they could do by next week if they had thought of it. And so
Yeah.
this is going to give them the opportunity to mix and match. And it also gives them a whole bunch of ideas of what they can aspire to do.
Yeah.
A very, very emerging speaker, 3-tiered pricing is beyond where they're at right now.
Right.
It's beyond, but it gives them something to aspire to get to. My favorite client is the one who says, oh, Laurie, we'd love the premium package, but we just can't afford that. Remember, I told you to price that way high. Like
Yeah.
there's no way they're buying it, right? But when they say, oh, we'd love to have it, here's the secret sentence. So Ashley, was there a particular bullet in the premium package that was really jazzing you? And you say, yeah, we'd love if you would secret shop our 5 locations. Well, how about if I just take that bullet out of the premium package, move it to the deluxe, and we'll do it for X. And it's a number in between the 4,000,
Yeah.
8,000. And now we have found what I call gap dollars. They were dollars that you had all along. I just
Yeah.
needed to show you the value I could bring that allowed you to spend it. It's similar to negotiation, but
Yep.
it feels a lot better than negotiation is all about money. And sweet spot is all about values and benefits.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I like the way that you give them those options. And we've done, and we do not do the 3 levels that you're speaking of, but we always submit a proposal with flat fee pricing, and then we can pick and choose after they've seen everything. So show them the whole pie, but let them pick and choose. But I like the 3. I really like the way that it's set up, because it makes them feel like they're shopping. So
Absolutely. And it also shows them, imagine for a moment that you called and you thought you were asking me to do a 1-hour keynote for an event in October. That's what you thought you wanted. But then when you see all the stuff that I offer in the premium, you're like,
Yep.
we never thought of that. You mean you'd come the night before and do a VIP dinner with our highest members? We would love, we've never done that before. Well,
Yeah.
how about we do that? And so all of a sudden, it's not just the keynote, it's what else can I bring that you care about? And
Yeah.
that's where creativity comes in.
Yeah. No, I love that. This is so good, you guys. And you cannot hire her. So listen in good for this podcast. So no, I absolutely love that. And so for you then, you offer for 3 tiers each and every time. So you're always making sure that you're getting the most out of the client, and you're able to serve them at the highest level in the way that they exactly want. So all of that is perfect. And then when you're thinking, so think back to when you first started your career. For a lot of speakers right now, it's like, okay, I'm bought into being a speaker. I have no idea where to find. This is the most commonly asked question I get. Where do I find paid speaking engagements? And I think for speakers who've been doing it a while, it's like, well, they're everywhere. I mean, literally, you could, like we could see engagements everywhere. But what are some tangible things that you did in the very beginning to prospect and find engagements and find clients, potential clients that actually have a budget?
Well, you're going to be really excited about this, because the other resource document is 93 ways to get booked and get paid. So 93 different ways. We probably have time for about 2 of them. So I'll start with my favorite
the
one.
2 best ones that you loved.
Yeah. Number 1 out of the 93 is always the one I use to answer that question. And I call it Circle 100. Everybody listening who's an emerging speaker needs to make a list of 100 people that they know who would recognize them on the street. Now, that might include your dentist if he or she recognizes you on the street. It does not include grandma and your first cousin, unless your first cousin is connected somewhere and has the ability to hire you. So it's a circle 100 of people who know you and like you. And this takes a long time, longer than you would think, because you need to have their name and their contact information, specifically postal and email. I am still a believer in postal mailings. I think they pop out
They're
compared
so
to
good.
emails. Emails get so lost in the noise, especially right now. So the way my business started is I made a Circle 100, but it wasn't 100. It was 36. I had 36 doctors or clinics that knew of me and liked me from my old world. So I sent them 36 direct letters that had been customized. So yes, it was a form letter saying what I could offer, but this is important. It wasn't me, I guess what I've left here and now I'm a professional speaker opening my own business. That's all about me, right? Sales 101 is make it be about them. So the opening said something along the lines of, do you wish that your staff was able to, fill in the blank, whatever it was. And everybody's answer to that would be, yes, I want my staff to do that. Well, I've got the solutions for you. And my original business practice was solutions or brewing. And it was a coffee cup and I'm all about solutions. So the letter was all about solutions. And then I would put a couple sentences in that was specific to my relationship with that person. And that's all I ever did for paid marketing. I sent 36 postal letters in 1996. And that's all I ever did. Everything else came as a result of it, because I believe in 2-for-1 spin. Every time I speak, there better be 2 people in the audience who hire me or recommend me, which means I need about 5 to 6 people to show interest and to say, oh, I'd like to know more about how we in our place. I need about 5 of those, and I need to turn 2. And if I turn 2, guess what? I never have to cold call. I never have to do another mailing. Now, I'm not saying I didn't do outbound marketing, but as far as paid campaign, that is the only thing that I ever did. That's where I would recommend people start. And I hope they have 100 to start with and not 36.
Yeah, because 100 would be perfect. And we talked about this. And for me, I had some clients a while back, and I was like, 2 of my clients that I was working with a while back, I'm like, just go on your phone and just text 5 people tonight. Tell them what you do. See if they can introduce you to the HR director at their company. And they were like, you're not going to believe it. I have meetings with 3 HR directors next week. And I'm like, no, I do believe it, because when you do that, and these are people that like you, and it doesn't have to be that you know HR directors. You just need to know someone who can know someone who will put you in touch and who knows you well enough to do that without a second thought. And people love being helpful. If you can give people something to say yes to, rather than asking them for something that they don't have and they don't have it to give, they're in such a better position. And it's the same with clients. That's why I'm like, people are scared to ask people to actually do business with them, but people want to say yes to you. They want to. We have had clients leave their place of employment and tell me, I'm leaving, but do not worry, because when I get to the next school, I am going to be bringing you in. I just need to find out my budget, because they want to stay connected to people they like doing business with. But I love the Circle 100. That's amazing. And I'll make sure that I link to the 93 ways to find engagements. And what was number 2?
Number 2 is really focusing on, what are you going to do or say in this program that makes people in the audience want to hire you? I think a lot of times when we're emerging speakers, we're thinking about this gig. Yeah, we're memorizing the speech or preparing our visual aids or whatever it is that you're going to do. We're really in the moment focused. And I see this now. I talk in metaphors all the time. I see it like a pool game, billiards. Is that if I'm going to beat you at billiards, I really have to make this shot thinking how I want to tee up my next shot. If I'm only worried about the 7 ball in the corner pocket and I'm not thinking about where the cue ball goes next, you're probably going to kick me. You're going to beat me, because I'm not strategically thinking ahead. So there's a lot of ideas in the download about thinking ahead. Here's one quick example. If I'm speaking in front of a group of, let's say, healthcare providers, I'm going to make sure that somewhere in that speech, I give an example where I say, and it has to be truth, always in truth. But one time I was working with US Bank, and the president told me, blah, 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 right? I do a story drop. And I know this seems basic. If anybody's listening who's a very experienced speaker, you're rolling your eyes and going, duh. But for inexperienced emerging speakers, this is not a ba-duh. You have to carrot drop. And that means that anybody sitting in that hospital audience whose partner or spouse works at a bank, if they like me, they're going to go home and say to the partner, hey, you guys hire speakers at the bank, don't you? You got to check out this woman. And then that becomes a referral. And those are just a real quick one. That's what we want people thinking. The interesting thing about sales is when we are reluctant, what you were just saying before about making those calls or doing that reach out, here's why. Very important. If you feel that making a sales call and getting a yes, the person, the client is doing you the favor.
Yeah.
I am so lucky that client said yes. Then it makes us nervous to do sales because we're serving our own pockets.
Yeah.
Change the word sales in your head
to serve,
to education and providing a need.
Yeah.
So if I have a hole in my roof and it's raining, do I wish that the roofer would wait a week to call me back?
No. And you know
I
what?
want to call back now.
That makes it so clear because today, right before this interview, I found out our fridge and our freezer, when it's not getting cold anymore. And now my husband is like so mad at me because he told me we need to buy a new fridge. I'm like, no, let's just get the one we have fixed. It's not a big deal. We should have bought the refrigerator. We didn't buy it. Now we have to call the salespeople back immediately after this. And honestly, we gave them our budget. We're going to spend whatever we have to spend because now we don't have a fridge or a freezer.
I heard appliances are backed up by 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah. So that's why we called ABT. I was like, look, I'm going to buy it today as long as you all can get it to me within a few days. And they were like, we're going to make an emergency stop. Depending on what you choose, we can get it to you Saturday. So I'm like, great. Show me all the fridges you can get me by Saturday. But you can't. And I couldn't believe this. So I was like, well, how people literally, if your fridge goes out, you need a fridge. What happens? They're like, you just have to wait. Like, that's unbelievable to me. But in that mention, the salesperson is not doing me a favor.
Correct.
Literally, they're serving a need that I have. In that case, they are actually doing me a favor by getting it.
A lot of people have asked me, how quick do you call back? If somebody approaches you, what we love, as we call stage side selling. It means I just got done talking. You approach me because you were moved by something I said. And you say, I want you to come into our law firm. You could really help us at our law firm. And I say, let's follow up. Let's talk about this. And people say, how quickly do you call her back? I'm like, the very next day. Just like I want my roofer to call the next day. What would be the advantage of waiting a week? And the answer here is, well, I don't want to seem desperate. You don't seem desperate. You seem like a person who's really engaged in customer service to potential clients. If your law firm has a need, I want to be the one to provide the solution. That's not you doing me the favor. And I don't say this. This is the head game. It's not you doing me the favor by paying me. It's me doing you the favor by accepting you as a client and helping your law firm. And that's the mind game we all need to be playing, even if you're making your very first sales call.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Just don't give up your power seat. And honestly, you shouldn't feel guilty for trying to help people. If what you do genuinely helps people and it can change the lives of an audience member. And I always ask this question when I speak, did you learn at least one new thing today? Because it's the little things that you learn in conversations that can literally change your life. It's not that you need to learn 75,000 new things. It doesn't need to be earth shattering. You can even be reminded of a principle that you knew and forgot. And if someone reminds you at the right time, it can really shift things for you. And that's what speakers do. We help people. So I'd love to know, because you are a customer service expert, what are the things you do before an engagement and after an engagement to ensure a great customer experience?
Excuse me. Sorry about that. One of my favorite things to do is make sure that after we've had an initial sales call, I send what I call a recap email. So it's just bullet, bullet, bullet. This is what we agreed to. Now, yes, there's going to be a booking agreement that follows, but there's something about concise summary of a very long conversation that I find the clients really appreciate. It does a lot of things for me. One, it provides a paper trail to refresh my memory. If I'm going to talk to several people in a day, the bullet list really helps me. Number two, it solidifies that I'm accurate in what I heard and that we've agreed to what we've agreed to. And then I can create the booking agreement to follow. By the way, sidebar, I choose not to call them contracts. The word contract scares a lot of people. And in some organizations, the contracts have to be approved by a board of directors or a next higher up. But a booking agreement is a softer phrase. And depending on the cost involved, there's a lot of midline managers that can sign off on it on their own without having to go to a higher level. And I think the third thing, it shows the client, I do it immediately after the call. I feel like it shows the client, Many of my clients, the meeting planners, are the get it done, the gold type people. If you are familiar with True Colors personality profiling, they're the get it done kind of people, and they like detail. I'm an orange or a free spirit, and I like to kind of wing it and fly by the seat of my pants. That's kind of the nature of a speaker. Well, I've got to make sure I'm communicating the way the client wants to hear. So it gives a little bit of an illusion of a more detailed person than I really am. And it's helping me keep on track and make them go, okay, we did choose the right person because she seems to be really on top of it. So that's one of the things I do pre-event that I think is a small thing anybody can do, no matter what level of the business that you're at. The second thing I do, and this has to do when we're back to in-person live events, the moment that I land on property or a touchdown at the airport, I send them a text message. And when I do the planning call ahead of time, not the sales call, but the planning call, I will say to them, could you tell me who I should notify when I'm wheels down? That way, you get to go to bed resting, knowing that I'm there in the hotel and I'll be ready the next morning. So it may not be the one I'm talking to. It might be somebody else, but they give me a cell number. Some of my colleagues actually film a little video. Here I am landing on, runway 1A, yeah. See you in the morning. I have not done that because usually I am not film worthy when I'm traveling. Yeah. But I do text them and say, and I am surprised, Ashley, the number of clients who say that the majority of speakers don't do that. That surprises me. It's just a little bit of a pacifier for them that says, no worries, I'm in town. And then I would say post-event, one of the things I really try to do is give a shout out on social media for the client. They are looking for social media content too. Everybody's looking for it. So if I can put a little meme together or a little something and give it to them, they can put it out onto their channels or share mine. And it just kind of keeps that conversation going afterwards. There's plenty others, but that's one quick one in each of the before, during, and after.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so valuable because customer service goes both ways. And like you mentioned about the contract, I think we spend a good amount of time going back and forth on contracts with clients. So I may need to try calling it a booking agreement and see if that helps at all. But it just with them signing things, that administrative piece of it after you get the official yes, takes some time. Like we have an admin that does that, and it takes some time, back and forth.
Well, and as a lawyer, you may disagree with me on this one, but I'm going to toss it out anyway. Okay. I choose to make my booking agreement very layman talk. It is really very similar to a conversation you and I would have. It doesn't have and my husband's a lawyer, so I could have done the legalese if I wanted, but I really took a standard contract and tried to peel as much of that away as I could, and I kept it simple. I got it to the big things: who, what, when, where, and how much. And that's pretty much what it says, because I do think that if somebody wanted to fight me on a contract, it'd have to be an awful big one for me to fight back. If we're talking about a medium to low range booking fee, if there's anything that they want to not keep their gentleman's agreement on, I'd probably just give them their money back and be done with it. I certainly wouldn't be going to court. So I make sure that I have the things that covers my end, but I really don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. I want to get rid of that barricade or hurdle if I can.
Yeah, and I think we have pretty solid contracts, only because I've seen so much in our agreement value. Like I don't want to be out of $50,000-$60,000 because I didn't put it in a contract.
No doubt.
I those are personal choices that you have to make, and your husband's a lawyer, so he can look over that. And for everyone listening, make sure you know what happens if the agreement gets canceled. Those are the big, when I think about speaker agreements, that's like the big thing. And then who owns the material? Can they record it? Can they not? Because a lot of my speakers they'll do it live, but then you license out the replays and things like that. You want to make sure you own that content. So protecting your intellectual property is important too, mainly because when clients send me contracts, they want to own my presentation, but I own all the copyrights and the trademark. So what a lot of speakers do is they just agree to that. And then they wonder how someone is just joining a company. You did the speech 50 years ago, and they're like, no, I just saw it the other day, because they put in the contract that they own it. So you do want to be careful about those things. But I do agree with, if you can make it clear, plain, simple, so that you can get to the check, then that helps a lot too. Plus, your agreement between the person that hired you typically is okay. What happens, where I've seen the contracts come into play and be more important, are when that person leaves the company. So that agreement will hold over when that person leaves. So those are just some things to think about. I didn't know we talked so much legal stuff on today's podcast, but we covered like licensing,
Yeah.
contracting. These are all really, 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 really powerful tools though. So now when it comes to marketing and maintaining the clients that you have, because it sounds like your business was built on that circle 36, I guess we could call it. And then after that you've gotten referrals and it's carried you through over the years.
Sure.
What do you do to attract new clients? Is that marketing? So you inbound?
It is, but mostly it comes back to that spin business. It's the referrals and the making sure that I make noise in the right places. So what I chose to do is adjacent marketing. So healthcare was my core middle, right? And so I did a bunch of work for quite a few years in the healthcare. Well, what's an adjacent industry to healthcare? It would be insurance. So I made the jump from insurance. And I did that for a while, and not just exclusively. I mean, that's where my market focus went. So I made noise in those spaces.
And
I got in those
like.
Noise would be doing podcasts, being in newsletters, approaching and doing outreach to people that are connected. It's asking somebody who hired me once, do you have any other colleagues that you think their organization? It's asking for the referral or the recommendation.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up serving a lot of different industries, is one would lead to the next. So I've done banking and I've done education, and I love right now, last year, the year before, I should say, 2019, luxury travel found me. And I love talking in luxury travel. Why? So it's a totally different muscle than talking to healthcare and insurance companies, right? Very different content going out. Same core message, but it's packaged differently. And so that keeps me interested. This is another important point. Some people will ask, should I niche? And some people believe yes, because if you can go deep, 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 deep in one industry, you become the name in that industry. So but my background was in eyes. I could have been the queen of eyes if that's what I wanted, and only talk to industries that touch the eye market. Oh my gosh, I would be so bored. I like different. And so if a widget company calls me this afternoon and I've never even heard of the widget and I didn't even know widgets were made, I get stimulated because now I have homework to do and people to interview and things to learn, and it keeps me fresh. It makes my stories fresh. How does my point, impact this audience? If I would have stayed eye pure, I'm not sure I'd even still be in business, because I would have lost my mojo. And my mojo is constantly wanting to change and learn and grow. So that's something for people to think about. But you got to start in your niche when you're emerging, because otherwise the other industries haven't heard of you. Go to what you know best and begin to grow from there.
Yeah, no, I love that. Everything you said was just so valuable. And we talk about this all the time, because I think for a lot of people, it's like, but if I don't, the reason I recommend some people niche is because it gives them focus. Not necessarily because they need to have a niche, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But it's like, it's so hard to figure out, how am I going to market to the world? It's easier to say, I'm going to market to insurance companies, and I'm going to market to insurance companies with 50 to 500 employees, because my background was working at a large insurance company. And so I know I can help them with my topic. It's harder to do it, but I agree that doesn't mean you have to stay there. And I think a lot of new speakers struggle with choosing an audience, because they're thinking, well, what if I want to do this audience? And what if someone from this company reaches out? We market primarily to companies, but I still love speaking to colleges. So when colleges reach out, I don't tell them, no, you're not a company. We speak to the colleges, because I can do that. I've done that. We wrote a book for law students called The Law School Hustle. And it's just been, I just love speaking to students, but professionally, most of our marketing efforts is spent marketing to companies, but we still do, you're not locked in. And I think that's what keeps people from making a choice, is they feel like I can't change later on down the road, or I can't pivot when building a brand, but you're proof that you can.
You absolutely can. And the fact of the matter is, unless you become mega famous, very few people are paying any attention to what we do. So I will see a lot of people get hung up on, what's my brand? What's my brand? Well, unless you are Mel Robbins and you are, some of these names that we all recognize, well, she probably needs to be thinking about her brand. But Laurie, guess the number of people who have heard of me is so small, but yet I make a great living. So we got to make sure the ego doesn't get mixed up in this, what's my brand and how can I pivot? Because very few people are paying attention or care. We are a very self-centered society. And so don't be scared of that. I mean, that's my thought. But I'm
No,
pretty Midwest down-home farmer's daughter thinking. I'm very much like, hey, if this doesn't work, throw it out, try something else. And as long as I am true to my values and I'm enjoying the ride, the rest is just gravy.
no, you're 100% right. And I just want every new speaker or speaker who is struggling with pivoting or switching brands or trying new things out to let that go, because I'm telling you, if you can just start trying stuff, pitching, failing, the sooner you get told no a million times and you realize you're still standing, the better. I think that that is so critically true. I think there are a lot of other people, maybe they're brand strategists, etc., who have sold everyone the idea that if your hue is not perfectly positioned and it's not right every single time, you're going to lose all this business. And it's just not true. I remember selling speeches when my website was just horrible, and no one really cared. It did get better, and I think they cared more later on down the line as we were pitching larger clients. But in the beginning, the most valuable thing I did was chase the no. If someone told me no, I realized it doesn't kill you. You just keep going. You can't get caught up on things that they don't build the foundation of your business. You're going to build that foundation. Your brand colors and switching your target and all that won't matter. You got to get out there and try some stuff.
Well, and we need to remember that this isn't prom, and no's don't hurt that bad. Right. It's not personal. It's not that they don't maybe want to know us or be with us. It's simply we're not the match. And you're actually doing me a favor when you give me a quick no, if it is a no, because that opens up my calendar to be chasing people who do want me. And what you said before about your website, in the early days, I have no doubt you were bringing solutions, results, data, content.
Yeah.
That's what people cared about. And whether you use pink or orange on your website, they just didn't care. Now, it does matter. I agree with you. As our number goes up, as our fee goes up, if you and I are both pitching $50,000 proposals, they're going to compare us down to everything, including our websites. But that's not what we're focused on in the early days. And I do think it's important that when we talk, think about what was it like when we first got started. And I remember opening the newspaper going, how can I find a client? And there was a little PR thing for a women's conference that was coming out. And obviously it was in October of that year, and this was September. So obviously I'm not getting in that time, but immediately after the event was over, I reached out to the person whose name was in the little ad. And I said, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for your next year. Right. So keep in mind, at one time we used to be 9 months to a year booking in advance. That has considerably shrunk up. And I had a call yesterday for somebody who wants somebody the first week in March. So that lead time has definitely shortened. But if they're wondering where to find bookings, start looking around at where are their meetings? Who's speaking? Are you comparative to them? And that's how you can get started.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's so true. So good. And that lead time has shortened a lot. I think for the pandemic, it's made it a lot shorter because we had a lot of clients in the very first quarter of last year that canceled everything or they paused everything. Thankfully, they didn't cancel. And then it all came back very quickly. And so now we just landed a contract 3 weeks ago for next Friday. So it just happens like that now. And we're in a different time altogether, but I totally agree with that. And for those of you who are just getting started, just know there's still room for you in the industry. No one has it all figured out. A lot of people are trying different things. And as times change, we change our marketing. We are always evolving to see how can we better connect with people who have the ability to allow us to serve their audience. So that will evolve. It's okay. You don't need everyone wants the playbook. Like I've given scripts and things like that, and people will literally send the exact script that we give out. And that's okay. But I'm like, don't be afraid to be like, how do I want to do this? Put my spin on it. Maybe you want to put a video in. Maybe you want to send something in the mail. You mentioned coffee cups earlier. Maybe you want to send a certain thing that represents what you do in the mail. That would be great to break up the monotony of 2020, 2021, really of the pandemic era that we're in now.
Yes, exactly. Now, I know you're getting ready to say goodbye to me, but before you do, can I tell them, your listeners, my biggest mistake after 26 years?
Absolutely.
I wish somebody had told me this, and they might have, but I didn't hear them. So hear me now. Now is the time to start building your lists, even if you don't know what to do with them today. Not just, I build lists of leads, people that could hire me. That was a no-brainer. But I didn't take the time to build the list of people who were excited about my work. They used to call them fans, and that word bothers me. Like a celebrity has a fan. I don't have a fan. And once I got over that word and changed it to people who need what I offer, I would have thousands and thousands and thousands of people on my mailing list today to listen to this podcast or to get my next newsletter or find out about my next book. But when I was an emerging speaker, I didn't connect that someday I would want those eager followers. So start building your list today. Even if there's only 5 people on it by next week, that's 5 you didn't have today. Even though you don't know what you're going to do with them, build the list today. Name, contact, and bare minimum email. So important.
And ask for their phone number each time too, because it's so much easier now to just text people. And I'm using an app called Community, and I really like it because it allows me to text back and forth and even send voice notes with people who've opted into my list. So you can be even more engaging. So I love that tip. That's so true. So true. So Laurie Guest, where can we find you? I will get all the links and link up to all of your specific resources, but where can we find out more about you?
Sure. So 2 answers. The first one is, if you want to learn more about me as a speaker, you can just go to myname.com. So it's laurieguest.com, and the correct spelling will be in the show thread. So you'll be able to find it there. But more importantly, what I really want you to do is go get my goodies. Remember, these are free. And even though you're going to have to put in your email, my promise to you is you will not hear from me. I will not be putting you on an email blast. You will not be somebody I market to. You have my word. I just ignore it when it comes in. But here's how you get it. You go to the URL unlockthegoodies.com, and the goodies is GOODIES. When you get there, a plain splash page is going to come up. It's going to ask you for a password. I have 30 different passwords. I can make as many as I want, and they match the industry I'm speaking to. So if you were a group of bankers right now, I'd be giving you the banker password, and all the resources in that vault would be things that bankers care about. Because you're speakers, your password is all caps NSA. That stands for the National Speakers Association. I'm a proud member, and they shaved years off my learning curve. I love NSA. So that's what I use as my code word for that. When you open that up, everything that I talked about is in there. There's a video on sweet spot pricing that's slower than what we did today. There is the 100 pick list and 12 deterrents so that you can create those sweet spot pricing. And there is the 26-page PDF called 93 Ways to Get Booked and Get Paid. Please go out there, find the bookings, join us in the speaker circuit, and let's go make a difference to the people who hear from us.
Definitely. Laurie, you've been so gracious with your wisdom and your time. This was such a great conversation. I 100% appreciate you being on the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. Please go check out her gorgeous website. Go to unlockthegoodies.com, password NSA, and connect with Laurie on LinkedIn as well, and just let her know, shoot her a message of encouragement. Hey, loved your episode, listened to it, thought it was great. Let her know that she's making a huge difference by doing shows like this. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast, and we will talk to you next time.